Hi, I'm Haylee from Oregon City Public Library, and I'm here to tell you the tale of Rumplestiltskin. Originally told by the brothers Grimm, this retelling is based off of Edith Tarcov's 1973 version. Once upon a time, in a place not so far from here, there lived a poor miller and his beautiful daughter. One day, the poor miller told a terrible lie. The king had come through, and in order to impress him, the miller told the king his daughter could spin straw into gold. The king, of course, was fascinated by infinite riches, so he took the poor miller's daughter back to his castle. He put her in a tiny room filled with straw and a spindle and said, "You must turn all of this straw into gold by morning, or else you are going to die." So the poor miller's daughter, being fearful for her life, began to weep, for she could not possibly turn an entire room of straw into gold. So, while she was crying, a tiny man entered the room, and he said, "Why do you weep, beautiful lady?" And she said, "The king expects me to turn this whole room of straw into gold, and I cannot." The tiny man says, well, what would you give me in return for turning all of this into gold?" The poor miller's daughter didn't have much, but she had a beautiful necklace from her mom. So she said, "Here, take my necklace." And the little man said, "That's sufficient." And he began to spin all of the straw into gold. Whirl, 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 he went, and the whole room was glistening. The next morning, the king came in and was shocked to find that the poor miller's daughter had done it. But this was not enough for him. Because she'd done it once, she could clearly do it again. So he took her to an even bigger room filled with straw. And once again he said, "You must turn this entire room of straw into gold before morning, or else you'll die." Once again, the poor miller's daughter, all alone, was very sad. She said, "How could I possibly turn this entire room of straw into gold? What's the likelihood that the little man will come back and help me once again?" Well, little man comes back. He says, "Hey, why are you weeping? There's more straw here." She says, "I must turn all this into gold before morning, or else I will die." The little man said, "Well, what can you give me to help you this time?" She said, "Well, I have this ring." And he said, "That's sufficient." And then he goes, whirl, 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 and all of the room turns into glistening gold once again. The next morning, the king comes back in, once again very shocked, but maybe a little less so this time. He says, "Oh my goodness, you did such a wonderful job. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take you to this huge room, and I'll give you the gift of marrying me if you should turn this room into gold. But if you don't, then you're going to die." And once again, the poor miller's daughter was all alone, and she wept and wept and wept. And once again, the little man came into the room and said, "Why are you weeping?" And the poor miller's daughter said, "I have to turn all of this straw into gold, or I'm going to die. And if I do, I have to marry the king." So the little man said, "Well, what will you give me this time?" And the poor miller's daughter was sad and said, "I have nothing left to give you." So the little man thought, and he said, "How about you give me your firstborn child?" The poor miller's daughter, thinking this was a long ways off, said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And whirl, 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 the little man turned all of the straw into gold. The next day, the king came in, and he was elated. Not only did he have 3 storerooms filled with gold straw, but he got to marry a beautiful woman. So, a year passes, and the miller's daughter, now a queen, has a beautiful baby with the king. And in comes the tiny man. The queen at this point had forgotten all about him. And he says, "I've come for what you promised me, queen." And she says, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Your firstborn child. Give it to me." The queen was distraught. She said, "This child is worth more to me than all the riches in all the land. What can I give you that you will allow me to keep my baby?" And the little man said, I don't want your rings and I don't want your necklaces. I don't want your jewels. I want your baby. But the poor miller's daughter wept. And as the little man has demonstrated before, he is empathetic with that. So he says, I'll tell you what. You can go and try to guess my name. I'm going to give you 3 days. And each day, on the evening of that day, I'm going to come and I'm going to give you an opportunity to guess my name. The queen, taking any chance at hope, says, of course, I'll do it. And the little man leaves. That night, the queen lay awake in bed, tossing and turning, thinking of all of the names that she could possibly think of. So the next morning, she sent a messenger out. And she said, messenger, bring me back all the names that you can find in the whole town. And the messenger did just that, came back with a list. That night, the little man returns to the castle and he says, so, what's my name? And the queen guesses, is it Tom? Is it Jacob? Is it Jack? Is it... And she lists off all of the names that she can think of. And each time the little man says, no, that's not my name. That's not my name. He's clearly not worried. He knows that his name is so weird that he's never going to have it be guessed. This happens again the second night. The queen sends a messenger out to go even further to find even more obscure names. And she says, is it Crookshanks? Is it Sheepshanks? And each time, the little man says, that's not my name. And for the third time, on the final evening, the queen is beginning to lose hope. But, you know, we do anything for our children. So she sends a messenger out again. And he comes back. And this time, he has a story of a little man dancing in the forest, singing, tonight I brew, tonight I bake, tomorrow the queen's little baby I take, for lucky I go, for lucky I came, for Rumplestiltskin is my name. The queen is overjoyed. This is clearly the tiny man, and this is clearly his weird name. So they wait for the little man to come, and when he does, she feigns ignorance once again. She says, is your name John? Is your name, oh, I don't know, Rumplestiltskin? And the little man is furious. He stamps his feet so hard that he falls into a hole into the ground, never to be seen again. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Thanks for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see you next week for another story.